On a freezing night by the lake, a millionaire stepped out of his luxury car, expecting only silence and the ache of loneliness that had haunted him for years. But at his iron gate, he found something that would change his life forever. A little girl, bruised and trembling, clutching a stuffed rabbit, whispering through her tears, "Please help my mom." In that moment, the world around him collapsed into a single choice: turn away or step into a story that would test his heart more than any fortune ever had. What unfolded was not just about rescuing a child, but about rediscovering the meaning of family, love, and second chances. Stay with us, because this story will break your heart and mend it again. And if you believe in the power of hope, don't forget to subscribe to the Retold Stories, where every tale reminds us why kindness still matters. The night air carried a chill sharp enough to sting the skin, but for Jack Callahan, the cold outside was nothing compared to the emptiness that gnawed at him from within. He had just pulled his silver Mercedes onto the long driveway of his Minnesota estate, a place that once pulsed with laughter, piano music, and the footsteps of his late wife, Melissa. Now it stood silent, the grand house echoing with memories he could not bear to face. Each crunch of gravel beneath his imported shoes sounded almost accusatory, as if reminding him that wealth had purchased comfort but never companionship. He lingered by the car door, hesitant to leave the warmth of its leather embrace, as though stepping out meant surrendering himself again to the loneliness waiting inside. The garden that once overflowed with roses was bare now, stripped by frost and neglect. Jack could almost hear Melissa's playful scolding for letting them die again. The memory stabbed at him more fiercely than the winter wind. He paused at the walkway, his breath clouding in the frozen air, when a sound reached him. It was faint, almost drowned by the content. Gusts, a fragile sob that stopped him in his tracks. At first he thought it was a stray animal caught in the fence, but as the sound grew sharper, ragged, unmistakably human, his chest tightened. His eyes swept the shadows until he saw her. Curled against the rusted iron gate was a little girl, small and frail, her knees pulled tight to her chest, clutching a battered stuffed rabbit. Her thin dress was soaked and torn, her skin smeared with dirt, and her arms were a map of bruises in shades of angry purple and sickly yellow. Her hands were raw and bleeding, her knuckles scraped down to tender flesh. Jack's heart stuttered. For a moment, he could not move, could not breathe. Then her eyes lifted to his. Wide, terrified, shimmering with tears, they pierced through his ribs and gripped something deep inside him that had long been buried. She whispered with trembling lips, "Please, don't send me back. Please help my mom." The words carried a weight that no child should ever have to bear. Jack's mind scrambled for reason. Was this some cruel setup? Some trap laid to exploit his wealth? Where were her parents? Who could have left her in this state? His thoughts collided with the raw panic that surged in his veins. When a porch light flicked on across the street, the girl flinched violently, curling in on herself as though the very light threatened to expose her. Jack's hesitation shattered. Instinct, more powerful than fear, took control. He crouched beside her, keeping his voice soft, careful not to frighten her further. "Hey, you're safe now. No one's going to hurt you here." He shrugged off his heavy coat and draped it around her trembling shoulders. She stiffened at first, but then, sensing no harm, let the rabbit be tucked into the folds of warmth. The gate groaned as Jack forced it open. When he lifted her into his arms, he was struck by how impossibly light she was, as though neglect had hollowed her out. Her hair clung to her damp cheeks, her heartbeat fluttering erratically against his chest like a trapped bird. Crossing the threshold into his home, Jack felt something stir in the silent walls, a presence of need so immediate it swept away years of numbness. Inside, he settled her gently on the bench beside the radiator, leaving his coat wrapped tight around her. He hurried to the kitchen, his hands fumbling for a towel and a mug of warm water. When he knelt beside her again, he spoke with the careful tone one uses with a stray animal, hoping not to spook her. "It's just water. You don't have to drink if you're not ready." She eyed him warily, suspicion etched deep in her young face. At last, with trembling fingers, she reached for the cup. She sipped once, then clutched it as if afraid it might be stolen away. Jack asked softly, "What's your name?" For a long moment, she said nothing. Then came the whisper, "Maddie." "That's a beautiful name, Maddie." "My name is Jack. I live here." She said nothing in return, only pressed her rabbit closer and darted anxious glances toward the front door. Jack noticed fresh blood on her arms where the skin had broken. He reached for the towel, but she recoiled. "Don't, please," she begged, shrinking from his touch. His heart sank. He nodded slowly. "Okay, no touching, I promise." The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by the ticking of the grandfather clock down the hall. Jack asked if she was hungry, if she wanted the bathroom, if he could call her mother. Each time she shook her head, folding further into herself. Jack's phone lay on the table, the thought of calling the police weighing heavily on him. He knew what he should do. Every instinct of a responsible man screamed for him to hand the situation over to professionals. Yet every time his gaze fell on Maddie's bruised arms and haunted eyes, he felt something fierce ignite within him. What if calling child services sent her back into the very hands that had harmed her? What if the system failed her, as it had so many others? He could not take that risk, not tonight. He placed the phone down and sat beside her at a safe distance. He told her she could stay as long as she needed, that no one would take her anywhere she did not want to go. Her chin quivered, her lips pressed tight, but she nodded faintly. Jack fetched a blanket from the linen closet and returned to find her already curled on the bench, exhaustion overtaking fear. Her rabbit was clutched tightly to her chest. He lowered his voice, whispering, "If you get scared, just call for me. I'll be right in the next room." He turned to leave, but a small hand shot out, clutching the hem of his coat. Jack knelt again, allowing her to hold on as tightly as she needed. That night, for the first time in years, Jack did not retreat into his office or drown his sorrow in whiskey. Instead, he sat in the dim hallway, listening to the steady breathing of a child asleep under his roof. Outside, snow whispered against the windows. The grandfather clock marked each lonely hour, and something within Jack cracked wide open. The wall he had built around his grief, the fortress of solitude he had lived behind, crumbled under the fragile trust of a little girl with nowhere left to go. He sat guard until dawn, knowing with absolute clarity that his life would never be the same again. Morning light crept across the vast windows of Jack Callahan's mansion, but it brought no warmth. Jack stood in his immaculate kitchen, staring down at 2 mugs of cocoa and a plate of toast he had prepared with hands that trembled more than he cared to admit. His phone buzzed with urgent messages from lawyers, reminders about multi-million-dollar contracts waiting for his signature, and impatient texts from his project manager. For years, those alerts had commanded his life. Today, he could not focus on a single one. All he saw in his mind was the little girl asleep in the other room, wrapped in his coat, her arms bruised, her eyes filled with fear. When he returned to check on her, Maddie was awake, perched stiffly on the foyer bench with the rabbit pressed beneath her chin. The oversized coat still swallowed her frame, and though she held his mug of cocoa, her small hands shook so badly she nearly spilled it. Jack moved slowly, careful not to crowd her, placing the toast nearby. She refused to meet his eyes, her gaze darting instead to the door and the hallway, as though mapping escape routes. Jack's heart clenched. He had spent decades negotiating with billionaires, but he felt utterly powerless before this fragile child. As he studied her, he noticed a fresh scrape across her knuckles, the skin rubbed raw. He wanted to reach out, to fix it, but he forced himself to stay back. Every instinct screamed to protect her, yet he knew trust could not be forced. When she pushed the plate away untouched and retreated into the guest closet, dragging his coat with her, Jack felt the weight of helplessness crush him. The closet was the only place in his sprawling mansion small enough to make her feel secure, and though his chest ached to see her hiding there, he understood. He closed the door gently, whispering, "You're safe," even though she had not asked him to. The hours ticked by. Jack paced the length of the house, phone in hand, his thumb hovering over the number for child services more times than he could count. Every time he nearly pressed the call button, Maddie's whispered plea from the night before rang in his ears. "Please don't send me back." The thought of betraying that fragile trust was unbearable. He had lost Melissa, his wife, because fate had torn her away. He could not face losing Maddie to a system that might return her to pain. He stared at Melissa's photograph on the refrigerator, her smile radiant, her eyes filled with the clarity she always carried. He remembered her voice. "Do what's right, Jack, even if it's messy." But this was not a blueprint or a contract he could control. This was chaos, and chaos terrified him. By midday, the pressure was too great. Jack called Rachel Morgan, a nurse he trusted, someone who had spent her life around suffering but never grew cold to it. Her calm, steady voice cut through his confusion as he haltingly explained. "There's a little girl, Maddie. She's hurt. She won't let me near her. She's terrified." Rachel's tone sharpened with urgency. "How bad are the injuries?" Jack's voice broke as he admitted. "Bruises up and down her arms. She hides in my closet. She barely eats. Every time I try to get help, she begs me not to. She says she's scared for her mom." Rachel did not waste words. "You did the right thing calling me. Do not ignore this. Kids don't run unless something is very wrong. Keep her safe." "I'm on my way." When Rachel arrived, her hospital badge still clipped to her scrubs, she entered with a quiet presence that did not startle Maddie. Jack watched as Rachel knelt to Maddie's level, her voice warm but gentle. "Hi, Maddie. My name is Rachel. I just want to make sure you're okay. Can I sit here with you?" Maddie hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. When Rachel asked to see her arms, Maddie's eyes darted to Jack, silently asking if she could trust this woman. Jack offered the smallest nod of reassurance. Maddie's trembling hands pushed the sleeve back, revealing bruises so dark they seemed to swallow the light. Rachel's jaw tightened, though her face remained composed. "You're very brave," she whispered. The kitchen, usually full of warmth and light, felt cold as ice as Jack looked on, guilt and anger twisting inside him. Rachel did not look away. "These are not accidents," she murmured. "We need more help." She called Detective Sam Bennett, a man she trusted from church, someone who had grown up in the system and carried its scars. Within the hour, Sam arrived, his kind eyes behind heavy glasses softened the weight of his rumpled suit. He placed his badge on the counter where Maddie could see it, speaking gently. "My job is to keep kids safe. You are not alone." But when he asked questions, Maddie shook her head violently, her voice barely audible, as she whispered, "If I talk, he'll hurt my mom." Sam's jaw tightened. Rachel and Jack exchanged a look of unspoken understanding. This was not a story with simple answers. The fragile balance collapsed when Maddie overheard the word police. Panic overtook her. She bolted from the kitchen, vanishing down the hall until Jack found her huddled behind the water heater in the mudroom, trembling so hard he thought her bones might shatter. He crouched low, keeping his hands open and empty. "You're not in trouble, Maddie. No one will make you leave. I'm not going anywhere." Slowly, painfully, he coaxed her back inside, his chest aching with each step. Sam spent the rest of the morning piecing together what little they knew. By noon, he had traced Maddie's mother, Lisa Parker, to a crumbling apartment building on the city's south side. Jack and Rachel went with him, dread heavy in their throats. Inside, they found chaos. Broken furniture, unpaid bills, blood-stained tissues, and a prescription bottle with Lisa's name. On a nightstand, Jack discovered a spiral notebook with shaky handwriting, a single line underlined 3 times. "If anything happens to me, protect Maddie." Next to it was a child's drawing of a girl with a red heart scrawled over her chest. Rachel whispered, "She tried, Jack. She really tried." That night, back at the mansion, Jack made homemade soup, the recipe his mother had taught him long ago. Maddie sat pale and shivering at the counter, her cheeks burning with fever. Jack's hand touched her forehead, too hot. Panic gripped him. "Rachel, she's burning up." Without hesitation, Rachel called the hospital. They rushed Maddie through the sleet-slick streets to the ER. The chaos of antiseptic air, fluorescent lights, and endless noise surrounded them. Jack filled out forms with a shaking hand, scribbling "temporary guardian," as though the words carried any real authority. Through it all, Maddie clung to his sleeve, her grip desperate, her eyes begging him not to leave her side. For hours, doctors examined her, murmuring about stress and exposure, but Jack barely heard them. He sat by her bed, telling her stories about hidden rooms in houses he had built, gardens that bloomed in secret courtyards, safe places where monsters could never find you. She drifted in and out, sometimes squeezing his hand so hard it hurt. When at last she fell into a deep sleep, Jack remained, watching her fragile chest rise and fall. Rachel handed him a cup of coffee, her eyes soft with quiet pride. "You stayed," she said. "Not everyone would." Jack shook his head, his voice breaking. "She's just a kid. She shouldn't have to be this strong." As dawn crept in, a nurse placed a small teddy bear on Maddie's tray. When her eyes fluttered open and she saw it, she smiled. Weak, wobbly, but real. The sight of that smile struck Jack like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He leaned close, his throat thick. "You're safe now, Maddie. You're not alone. Not anymore." In that moment, Jack realized it was not only Maddie who was being saved. Somewhere deep inside, he was being saved too. Snow piled high against the tall windows of Jack Callahan's mansion, muffling the world beyond. Inside, the once silent halls now carried the fragile sounds of a child's presence. The scrape of crayons across paper, the tentative hum of a lullaby, the small, quick footsteps of Maddie as she explored corners that had not known life in years. On Jack's desk, architectural renderings and contracts remained, but they were half buried beneath Maddie's crooked drawings. Bright houses with smoke curling from mind, chimneys, two stick figures holding hands in the yard. Above one drawing, in wobbly red letters, she had written a single word: home. Each time Jack walked past it, something deep inside him shifted, as though his heart were slowly stitching itself back together. Yet peace was fragile. Detective Sam Bennett's daily visits carried a weight Jack could not ignore. Brad, Lisa Parker's violent boyfriend, was not only real, but searching for Maddie. His record of violence stretched back years, a shadow trailing them all. "He knows about you," Sam warned one evening. "And he has been asking questions. We have to be ready." The mansion, once a symbol of opulence, became a fortress. Patrol cars circled the gates at night. Rachel taught Maddie how to check every lock, and Jack dug out an old pair of walkie-talkies from storage, pressing one into her small hands. "Channel 6, whenever you need me," he said. Maddie's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, but her eyes still darted nervously at every sound. Nights were hardest. Maddie woke often, shaken by nightmares, clutching her rabbit until its seams began to split. Jack sat beside her in the dim light, whispering stories about secret rooms and hidden staircases, places no monster could ever reach. Sometimes she fell asleep with her hand clutching his, sometimes with the walkie-talkie still pressed against her cheek. Jack kept vigil long after she slept, watching her fragile chest rise and fall, his own heart heavy with both love and fear. He had faced boardrooms filled with ruthless men, but nothing terrified him more than the thought of failing this child. It was Rachel who first suggested the trap. Over coffee, her eyes sharp with determination. She said, "Brad wants money and control. If he thinks you are desperate for Lisa, he will show himself. Offer a reward. Go public. Let Sam handle the rest." Jack recoiled at the idea of exposing Maddie's pain to the world. But Rachel was right. Brad would not resist such bait. Reluctantly, Jack released a statement through a trusted reporter, offering a $50,000 reward for information about Lisa Parker. The news spread quickly across local media. Jack's phone rang incessantly, with false leads and cruel jokes, but Rachel and Sam sifted through every call, waiting for the one that mattered. Maddie watched the coverage with wide eyes, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Will he see me?" Jack knelt beside her, his voice steady though his chest tightened. "You are safe here, Maddie. No one gets in unless I allow it. And if you are ever scared, remember Channel 6. She nodded, but Jack felt the tremor in her hand. Then the first threat arrived. A voicemail, slow and deliberate. "You want Lisa? Mind your own business, or the kid gets it." Jack played it twice, his hand shaking. When he showed it to Sam, the detective's face hardened. "That is him. We are close." Preparations intensified. Alarms were tested. Patrols increased. Rachel insisted on moving Maddie's bed to a room near Jack's own. Each night, he tucked her in, with the walkie-talkie beside her. Sometimes she whispered in the gray hours before dawn, "Don't let him find me." Jack promised again and again, not ever. The storm broke just after midnight. Thunder rumbled across the lake, rain lashed the windows, and the house shuddered with each gust of wind. Maddie jolted awake at every clap of thunder, clutching her rabbit and the walkie-talkie, waiting for Jack's voice. Down the hall, Jack lay awake too, every nerve taut, replaying Brad's threats in his mind. When lightning cracked and the security lights blinked, Rachel found him in the kitchen, hands trembling as he poured tea. "I can't lose her," he whispered. Rachel gripped his arm. "She trusts you. That is everything." Then the phone rang. Sam's urgent voice cut through the storm. "He is on the property. Lock every door. We are." Moving in, Jack's heart lurched. He raced down the hall as Rachel rushed to Maddie. The girl was already half awake, eyes wide with terror. "He is here, isn't he?" she whispered. Jack crouched, steadying his voice. "We stay together. No one will take you." Maddie's small hands clung to his coat. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hall below. Brad's voice, rough and slurred, rose like poison through the stairwell. "Come out, kid. You think you can hide?" Maddie whimpered. Jack's body went rigid with fear and fury. He remembered every story he had told her, about hidden places, about safety. Now, it was real. He pulled her close, shielding her, as the chaos unfolded. The crash of doors, the thunder of boots, then Sam's voice booming, "Police, stay where you are." The struggle was short but brutal. Brad was dragged from the mudroom, cursing, his face pressed to the marble floor. Maddie's eyes locked on Jack, wide with fear, then overflowing with relief when she saw he was still there. Jack dropped to his knees, pulling her into his arms. Her tears came in silent waves, her small body trembling against him. Rachel knelt beside them, her own tears hidden by the rain on her cheeks. Sam's voice softened. "It's over. He is not coming back. You are safe, Maddie." Jack could only nod, stroking her tangled hair, his own tears burning hot. In the quiet after the storm, news arrived that Lisa had been found alive, battered but breathing, in a trailer 2 counties away. She was rushed to the hospital and asked for her daughter. When Maddie heard, relief and fear collided on her small face. Jack wrapped both arms around her. "You did it, Maddie. You are safe. Your mom is safe too." Rachel's hand rested on Jack's shoulder. "You kept your promise." Jack closed his eyes, letting those words sink deep. Weeks passed, and spring crept into Minneapolis. Snow melted from the garden beds, and sunlight softened the mansion's sharp edges. Brad sat in prison awaiting trial, his threats silenced at last. Lisa slowly recovered, her strength returning with each visit to her daughter. The state granted Jack temporary custody, skeptical at first, but unable to ignore the stability Maddie had found with him. Social workers came and went, clipboards full of questions, but Jack answered with calm honesty. Each time their suspicion cut deep, Maddie's presence was his answer. Her drawings taped across the walls, her laughter echoing in the halls. Rachel became part of their daily life, bringing books and gentle laughter. Detective Bennett stopped by with board games and stories that made Maddie giggle. Mrs. Delgado baked cookies and soups, filling the house with warmth it had not known in years. Therapy sessions with Dr. Linda Ross helped Maddie put color to her fears, gray for the shadows that still haunted her, yellow for the hope she carried like sunshine. Jack never missed a session, never let her walk in alone. Afterward, they would split a cinnamon roll at the bakery down the street, sugar dusting her chin as she grinned. The first day of Maddie's new school was bright and cold. Jack and Rachel walked her to the gates, Rachel holding her backpack, Jack clutching her small hand. Other children rushed past, but Maddie stood tall. Before she stepped inside, she turned, waved once, and smiled with a confidence that stole Jack's breath. He waved back, whispering, "You've got this, kiddo." That afternoon, as he traced her newest drawing on the dining room wall, a house with wide open doors, trees glowing yellow, and 2 figures holding hands, Jack realized something. He had spent his life building houses, magnificent, but empty. Now, with Maddie, he was building a home. And this time, he understood the difference. There are moments in life when the world seems to collapse into a single choice. For Jack Callahan, that moment arrived on a freezing night when a little girl knelt by his gate, bruised and trembling, begging for help. He could have turned away. He could have let the system handle it, signed another contract, buried himself in the safe routines of wealth and grief. But he did not. He listened to her trembling voice, and in choosing to stay, he found not only a child to protect, but a reason to live again. Maddie's story is not only about pain and survival. It is about the extraordinary strength of a child who had every reason to give up but held on anyway. It is about a man who thought his life was over, who believed nothing could pierce the walls of loneliness he had built, until a frightened girl's plea cracked them wide open. Together they discovered what it means to build a home, not of marble and contracts, but of trust, courage, and love. The bruises on Maddie's arms told a story of cruelty, but her drawings told another one, a story of hope. A crooked house with smoke curling from the chimney, 2 stick figures holding hands beneath the sundae. A word scrawled in red marker, home. Each line was a declaration that even after everything, she believed safety was possible, that love could exist, that someone would keep their promise. And Jack, in protecting her, discovered a truth he had lost. That the greatest wealth is not measured in money, but in the lives we choose to stand beside when it matters most. This story reminds us that kindness is not free. It costs time, sleepless nights, fear, and sacrifice. But it is always worth the price. Because in giving Maddie safety, Jack found himself saved. And in watching her grow, in hearing her whisper, "Dad," for the first time, he knew he had been given a second chance too. Here at the Retold Stories, we share tales like this because they remind us of the power we all hold. The power to open our doors, to keep promises, to be someone's safe place when the world has given them none. These are not fairy tales. They are reminders that even in the darkest moments, light still exists. If this story moved you, if you believe in love that heals and second chances that restore, we invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to the Retold Stories and turn on notifications, because the next story might be the one your heart has been waiting for. Let us keep walking together through stories that break us open, and then remind us why hope is never lost.